And your female artist of the year is...
Open it up. Whoa, Lorrie Morgan.
I was thinking, who is that? John Anderson punched me and said, get up there. But all I could think of was, he has made a mistake. Doug Stone likes me, and I thought he read my name out just because he liked me, not because I'd won.
Give me that.
You're gonna need that. Here you go.
Thank you very much. I'm totally surprised, to say the least. My first award, what can I say? And I thank you, the fans who voted for me. I appreciate it very much. And thanks, Mom and Morgan and Jesse. And I love you, and thank you very much.
Our special guest is a child of this show business complex. Having sung on the Grand Ole Opry beginning at the age of 14 with her father, George Morgan, later making guest appearances on the Opry until she was 25, when she became the youngest regular member of the Grand Ole Opry. At age 18, she worked at our Opryland amusement park, singing bluegrass music. Also, she worked with our television station on the morning show that I hosted, and later on Nashville Now, which I hosted. And from there, she went on to show business history at RCA Records. Please welcome one of my favorite people on this show and in this series. Please welcome Miss Lorrie Morgan.
Hello, baby.
Hi, y'all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Did you really think Doug Stone had made it up and said your name because he liked you?
I really did. For a brief moment, I thought, well, he's just kidding, because Doug is a very large, practical joker. And I really did, for a minute, I thought, well, they're going to say, no, I'm just kidding. It's, you know, Reba or whatever. And John just really, he, like, pushed me out of my seat and said, get up there.
Well, you mean you were hesitant to get out of your seat and walk up there?
Yeah,
you really didn't believe it?
I really didn't.
It was your first award?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Lorrie, I want to talk to you, first of all, about women in country music.
Okay.
Because of something you wrote in a publication I read. You said, I'm a very strong believer that women have it a lot tougher these days, and we have a lot more responsibilities and duties on us. You, at one time also, and I'm quoting you, you said, if a woman complains in this business, she's a bitch. If it's a man, he's a strong-headed businessman. Did you say that?
I did say that.
Was there something that prompted you to say that?
Well, I think for a long time, I had a reputation in the music business as being hard to get along with. And I don't think that, I know that. And I think that part of the reason that everyone perceived me as being so hard to get along with was because I knew what I wanted. And I had gone to a major record label here in town and was actually under contract with this label. And they said, look, we don't want you hanging around, we want to change your image. We don't want you hanging around Grand Ole Opry people. We want you to totally get into the younger crowd scene, you know, not that there's anything wrong with these people that I'm getting ready to mention, but we want you to hang out with the Rodney Crowells and the Roseanne Cashes and Emmylou Harris and, you know, the generation that's
Jimmy
really...
Dickens wasn't hip enough.
No, Jimmy wasn't hip enough, and they said, we want you to quit wearing short dresses, and we want you to wear those long hippie-looking dresses and totally change what I was about. And I basically blew up. and said, well, you know, you're obviously looking for someone else, not me. And from that, really from that point on, it was like I was classified as that term that...
As a bitch.
Yes, I was.
You think they think the same of Reba McEntire? She's pretty hard-nosed.
She is pretty hard-nosed. But for some reason, I don't think they think that about Reba. Maybe Reba's a little more soft-spoken about it than I am. But Reba's a very tough businesswoman also. And I think that people actually don't think because I'm blonde-headed and full of energy and I've got such a joking side to me, they don't think I know what I'm talking about. And it's totally wrong.
You think you're sexy?
I think I can be if I want to be.
Now, Lorrie, I remember the time you told me once about how when you were on Nashville Now, how your label watched you and they were quite concerned with how you dressed, whether the skirt was too short. They even observed your grammar, didn't they?
Yes, very much.
And you told me at that time when you lived with Keith Whitley.
You don't have grammar. That's like one time Keith called home from the studio, and this was right when we first got married.
I love this story.
And he was in the studio, and it was real late at night, and he called me, and I said, how's it going? And he said, oh, it's great, Lorrie, you're gonna love the music. And he said, it's just really, really good. And I said, well, how much do you lack? And he said, well, we lack them all, but I don't know which one's gonna be. I mean, he was serious, God love him.
I love that story.
It was, he was serious.
Well, you made your Grand Ole Opry debut at the age of 14. And believe it or not, I wish we had this on video, but we have the audio portion of you singing Paper Roses. Why did you pick that song?
Well, I picked that song because it was popular back then. Marie Osmond had just come out with Paper Roses. And I really liked the song, Paper Roses.
Well, let's go back and listen to a little bit of Lorrie Morgan making her Grand Ole Opry debut with Paper Roses. 14. December 14th, 1973, your father had introduced you, and he also said that that was, I believe, his mother and father's 60th wedding anniversary, your grandparents.
That's right.
And then after he went off, as we listened to that tape, Bud Wendell, who at that time was director of the Opry, came out and congratulated your father, George Morgan, on being there for 25 years. It was his 25th anniversary.
His 25th anniversary, and you and I were talking about this earlier, and now that you had mentioned that, I remember that they had a huge cake for Dad that night, and myself and I think Ann Boatman and a couple other people, I think Bud Wendell carried it out to Dad on stage.
Well, speaking of your father, we have a piece of video that I think is very important. Most of you know that the Grand Ole Opry House, which is in this complex, only became the Grand Ole Opry House in 1974. Prior to that, for about, I guess, 30 years, the Opry emanated from the Ryman Auditorium downtown. And we have your daddy, he closed the Friday Night Opry for the last time from the Ryman Auditorium on a Friday night, and the next night they moved out here. This was March 15th, 1974. Let's take a
video?
We have your daddy on video, yes.
Well, sir, for the last song that I'll get to sing in this old building, I'd like to do the first one that I ever sang in this old building back in September of 1948, Candy Kisses. Thank you. Candy kisses wrapped in paper mean more to you
wasn't much left of that because right after another few bars of that, he signed off and said goodbye. And they left the Ryman Auditorium forever. Would you do me a favor?
Yes.
We purposely had you bring your guitar and we put it right here. And I wondered if you could sing a little bit of Candy Kisses for us.
I will try to sing a little bit of Candy Kisses.
Don't you do this on your
I do occasionally.
or in your roadshow?
I do it with the band, and because women now have the ability to get acrylic nails put on, I don't play guitar that often.
Oh, okay.
But I'm going to try it for you.
Okay.
Candy kisses wrapped in paper mean more to you than any other line. Candy kisses wrapped in paper, you'd rather have them any old time.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
Speaking of Candy Kisses, my sister Candy, who that song was, she was named after Candy Kisses, is here today.
Where is Candy?
Candy's right out there.
Stand up, Candy.
We've got laryngitis. She actually taught me how to sing.
Did she really?
Yep, right there.
Your father wrote that song, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And it became his trademark.
Yes.
Became
He
his...
always told me, he said, Lorrie, he said, no matter what you do, he said, be sure you like your real big hit record, he said, because you're going to be singing it for the rest of your life.
You had a short career with George Jones.
I did.
Tell me
yes.
about that.
I started working with George when my daughter Morgan was just a baby. So I guess I was probably 21, something like that. And my husband at that time, Ron Gaddis, who is still plays bass for George and George's right-hand man out there on stage, came to me and said, look, George is having auditions for female vocalists. Would you like to go try out? And being a big fan of George's and everything, and Tammy's, I knew all the George Jones and Tammy Wynette songs. And I thought, well, I need a job, I'll go try it out. And I went that night, and there was like 4 other females in there for the audition. And I got the audition, I got the job, and went on the road with George for the experience of my life.
Why do you say that?
It was, you know, unfortunately, I was working with George during his no-show Jones days.
Oh.
And there were a lot of nights that...
Did you ever make the speech, George couldn't be here tonight because he's sick, and but we'll do the show for you anyway?
I didn't have the guts to say it. I didn't. I would come out and we would get the word, you know, okay, go out and do 2 songs. And so I'd go out and do 2 songs, and I'd be bowing, you know, and I'd kind of be looking over at the side of the stage like, well, what do we do now? And they'd go, do another one. So we'd like learn songs on stage, you know, and finally one night, George came out after me and the band had done probably 30 minutes. George finally came out, and we were like, whew, relieved that he was there and everything, and he came out, and he used to open his show with a song called Ragged But I'm Right.
Mm-hmm.
He came out and he sang I'm Ragged But I'm Right, and he went right into He Stopped Loving Her Today, and he said, thank y'all very much and good night. And we were standing, they were throwing bottles at us on stage and popcorn, and popcorn really didn't bother us, the bottles that were getting a little bit heavy there, but we had to get on the bus and lay down. They were rocking the bus, and at that point, you know, I started wondering if this was really the life for me, you know. I thought, and if this is what the music business does to you, I think I'm gonna get out.
I read in some of the, I guess some of the stories about you with George that you said he had given you advice. What kind of advice did he give you?
George Jones?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Is that an improper statement?
I can't remember any advice, really, that George Jones gave me, that George Morgan.
Your father?
My father.
Yeah, I can imagine he gave you advice.
Yeah, I said don't go out with him again. Was advice. He also told me, he said, Lorrie, never marry a musician.
He did?
Huh. Did I listen?
Well, you married Ron Gaddis. He was fronting the George Jones show.
But you know, something good came out of that, and that was Morgan. And
then you married Keith Whitley.
And Jesse came out of that one.
And then later you married Brad Thompson.
He was not a musician. And I, never mind.
Excuse me?
Nothing.
What happened to that last marriage?
Well, I think that I'm going to be very frank and very honest.
Okay.
I think that I was very attracted to Brad because I saw him out on the road, and that he looked like he was such a devoted, hard worker for Clint. He was very nice looking. And I frankly was, I guess, still, I guess, on the rebound or whatever you want to call it from Keith, that I had not found that Keith Whitley again in my life. And I guess I was just very attracted to that this man was interested in me and didn't seem at the time to be interested in anything but me. And I was just kind of swept away a little bit, I guess.
I want to talk about Keith Whitley.
All right.
You once told me, Lorrie, that Keith Whitley was the great love of your life. And I think Keith Whitley was a man that everybody who met him, everybody loved. He had a winning personality. How did you meet Keith Whitley?
I met Keith at a recording studio one night. I was being produced, or actually I was a demo singer at Acuff Rose. And this night, I'd stayed over late to do a demo session. And before I could get in to do my session, the studio was booked and someone was in the studio. And as I was walking by the studio, I heard this voice that was, I thought, the best voice I had ever heard in country music. And I walked inside the studio, and Keith Whitley was in there singing, Does Fort Worth Ever Cross Your Mind? Mm. And I said, who is that? And they said, that's a new country singer. His name's Keith Whitley. And they introduced me to Keith, and he in turn was a big fan of mine from your show. Mm-hmm. And that's how we met.
Didn't you meet later at the Opry?
Well, that was later, after I'd met him for the first time. Someone had pitched me, well, Dean Dillon had given me a song of a copy of a song called Miami, Miami. And I'd listened to it day in and day out, and I thought it was the most beautiful song I'd ever heard. And on the way to the Opry, one Friday night, I was listening to Keith Bilbrey or somebody on the air, and they said, now here's a new song called Miami, Miami. And I was just floored that this song that I'd been listening to as a demo was now a record on the radio. And I said, who is that? I know that voice. And after the song was over, Keith Bilbrey said, that was Keith Whitley with Miami, Miami. Well, when I got to the Opry that night, I looked on the schedule, and he was on the Opry. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, I can't wait to see him again. So I walked up to him and I said, Keith, I'm Lorrie Morgan, and I just wanted to tell you that I love your record, Miami, Miami, and I'm a big fan of yours. And he said, well, you don't have to tell me who you are. I remember meeting you years ago, and I'm a big fan of yours, too. And I've just recently had a divorce, and would you like to go out?
Oh. You blew him off, didn't you?
I did. I was so overwhelmed that I just turned around and walked off. I was like, I was just like stupid. And I walked in the dressing room, and my drummer said, Lorrie, you look like you've seen a ghost. And I said, Keith Whitley has just asked me out. And he said, what'd you say? And I said, I just walked off. And he had asked me for my number before I walked off, and I just kind of turned around and walked off. And that night I left the Opry. And as I was driving home, I thought, Lorrie, you idiot, why didn't you leave your number? So I turned the car around off Briley Parkway, and I went back to the Opry, and I handed my number to Tim Atwood, who was a piano player at the Grand Ole Opry, and I said, would you mind taking this in and giving it personally to Keith Whitley? And he called me the next day at 11:30.
And you started your dating process there.
Right.
Got married in, what, late 86?
Right.
We have what I think is a beautiful video. You and Keith came to Nashville now in January of 87. And you've been married a couple of months now. And I had heard, I think I had a letter from, was it Sandy Hook, in Kentucky, where he's from, saying that this lady said that she'd heard a rumor up there that you were pregnant. And she wondered if I would ask you that question, if you were indeed pregnant. And I think that's where we go to the video, where you answer my question.
Is that for me to answer? Well, I guess I'll just answer it truthfully. Yes.
Well, congratulations. That's wonderful. I love that.
God love
Yes,
him.
it's true.
Is that difficult for you to watch?
I haven't seen that.
It's well, it showed the two of you had been very happy, and ultimately that relationship, well, it became tougher, didn't it?
Yeah, it
Though
did.
you never stopped loving him.
No.
Well, the Keith Whitley I knew was always outgoing, happy, sober. I never saw him take a drink. I never saw him drunk. And yet he died of acute alcoholism.
You know what's strange, Ralph, is that I never saw Keith take a drink. Now that's very strange.
That really is. And, but this became a major problem for you, didn't it? Would he show up at the house drunk?
Yeah, most of the time Keith was always very punctual and always on time and always, you know, would call me 4 and 5, 6 times a day. And no matter if he was in town or out of town. And the days I knew things were wrong is if I didn't hear from him a lot and if he was late coming home. And he would, you know, show up at the house, not like falling down drunk, but I'd know that he'd been drinking. And unfortunately, most of the time it was on times when either I had to go do something that he knew that I really couldn't be there to keep an eye on him, you know. And so it was never like we didn't have liquor in the house, and so it wasn't like we had an open bar and he could. So he would keep it somewhere where I didn't know.
He would hide it?
Yeah, where it was.
You once told me that in order to cope with Keith and to keep him from getting up in the middle of the night and finding a drink, you tied your legs together?
Yes, I did that on numerous occasions, where he would pass out on the bed, and I would I was worn out, you know, setting up with him and trying to, you know, I would even literally go to the bathroom with him because there were things in the medicine cabinet that had alcohol in them, such as mouthwash, anything that had any type of alcohol in it, he would drink it when he was drinking. And I would have to go to the bathroom with him or go wherever he would go, I would go. And so when he would finally, you know, get so tired of begging me for a drink, he'd pass out. And I would, you know, the big robe, terry cloth robe ties, I would lay down beside him and I would tie my ankle, and then I would get his leg and I would tie his leg to my leg. And many nights we would fall together going to the restroom, you know, so because he didn't know his leg was tied, and, you know.
You once told
But
me...
he never got mad.
Well,
He never got mad.
You once told me that he did not like to drink.
And he didn't like to be around people who drank. He didn't like how people acted when they drank. And the sad thing about it is that I know that it was truly a sickness with Keith. It wasn't because, hey, I want to go tie one on, and hey, I can't deal with the problems of the day. It was truly a chemical imbalance that drove him to the bottle.
And he ultimately died of what, overdose?
Alcohol overdose.
Did anybody blame you for his death?
You know, it's funny because a lot of people still, they never say it to my face, and if they do, they got a big surprise coming. But a lot of people I've heard talk that I was responsible for Keith's death or that I murdered Keith.
Why would they say that?
And because, Ralph, people, and you know it as well as I do, are so jealous of anybody that's happy or anybody who had anything good in life. They want to find something wrong with it and a reason to blame someone else for either their misery or what's happened to somebody else. And I have heard it, I can't tell you how many times that I had Keith killed, or, you know, just heartless, ruthless things. And it's totally absurd. I mean, it's totally absurd. And like I said, these are the people who would never tell me that to my face.
Well, I have heard of a few wild rumors that got started about people in our business which were totally off the wall and totally untrue.
Yeah.
You had a duet with him that was a hit that you had to put together after his death, didn't you?
Yeah, and very strangely, I actually went in the studio May 9th, which Keith passed away on May 9th, '89. And a year later, I was in the studio on May 9th doing this duet, Till a Tear Becomes a Rose.
And that became a big hit and won an award, I think, from
Yes.
CMA.
Did.
We've got some lovely pictures of Lorrie's children. And could we show those? First of all, there is Morgan.
That's Morgan, yes.
How old is Morgan?
Morgan is 14.
She's a cheerleader, I take it.
She's a cheerleader. She's this is her last year in grade school, so she's headed to big Father Ryan High School next year.
And she's beautiful. And that young fella there is Jesse Keith.
Did you hear the laughs? I mean, you know, people, you can look at him and know he's got something up his sleeve. He's just got the look. Yeah, that's Jesse's.
How old is Jesse Keith
He's
now?
7.
When I went out to the Academy of Country Music Awards in 1992, I ran into you with Troy Aikman, and you introduced me to him.
Yeah.
And I know that that romance got a lot of publicity. And subsequently, for whatever reason, it was terminated. What about Troy Aikman?
I would say that at this point in my life, next to Keith Whitley, Troy Aikman was I was totally in love with Troy, totally. And there was nothing I wouldn't have done for Troy. I was, at one point, I mean, I was willing to move to Dallas or whatever I had to do and come back and forth to Music City and do my sessions and whatever. And because of the awful publicity, the rude things that people say, it ruined our relationship.
You mean that relationship was broken up by rumors?
Rumors, media, and a lot of loud mouths.
Did Troy find that difficult, the relationship with you, did he find the attendant publicity difficult to handle?
Yes, he did.
Was there a particular issue that, one particular issue that...
I think that unfortunately, you know, I read in an article one time that Troy was attracted to the strong woman who has a life of her own, has you know, a career of her own, very strong, very caring, and very loving. That's what he was attracted to. And I don't believe that because I feel like I offered all of that in the relationship. And I think because of my children, I think that he had a hard time with my children, that they were someone else's children, and it was an already made family, and I think he had a real big problem with that. But I also think that Troy's very young.
Are you still friends?
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying anything that I wouldn't want Troy to hear. I mean, I think that he would agree that he had a problem with my children and our age difference. We are still friends.
How much older are you than Troy?
Can I add it up here? Ooh, 8, now almost 9 years older.
Have you made an overt attempt to recapture this relationship?
You mean with Troy? Have I tried to get back together with Troy?
Yes.
Yeah, I did. I tried desperately to convince Troy that he should love me. No, I really did. I tried everything from whatever. I mean, I tried to, you know, to patch things up and to work things out. And at one time, we did try and get back together. And I think too much had been done and said. And it's best for me, looking back, and it's best for Troy that we are friends. But it hurt at the time, and it took me a long time to get over it. And I'm happy to say that I'm going on with my life, and I have no regrets about that relationship. I only regret that it hurt as long as it did.
Let's have some fun.
Let's please do.
All right. Now, one of my favorite stories is a story that took place at the Chevrolet Geo Theater here at Opryland. And it involved the song Something in Red. Do you know what I'm talking about? And you had a problem on stage. You fell.
Yeah.
As a result of falling, a lot more of you was seen on that stage that day than you had anticipated.
You know, I always normally wear pants on stage. And this day at Opryland, I was working the Geo Theater, and it was the first day that my new record label, B&A, was coming to see one of my shows. And I thought, well, I will dress up a little bit for my record label. So I'm on the bus with Ruthie, my secretary and best friend, and we were getting out these little things for me to wear, and we finally came across this little taupe dress, that lace up on the top and chiffon, just not very far above the knee, but, you know, real pretty, low dress. And it dawned on me that it didn't have any hose on the bus, and was actually frantically looking for a pair of underwear to wear. And
excuse me, didn't you have any on?
that's none of your business, Ralph.
All right. Okay, you're looking for underwear and you're looking for hose.
So Ruth opens a drawer on my bus, and she gets this pair of red lace underwear out. And she said, here's some. And I said, well, okay, is it going to show through the dress? The problem was, Ralph, the color of the underwear, okay? Not that I didn't have any. It was the color so it wouldn't show under the dress, okay? So anyway, we put these red panties on and standing there, and I said, okay, I stood up and I said, now I'm gonna stand right here at the light, with the light behind me. Can you see through the dress? And she said, no, it's perfect. You can't see red, you can't see through it, everything's perfect. I said, okay, so I go out and I'm so prepared to give this the show of my life, you know, to impress my record label. And I do this part in the audience, in my show, where I go to this gentleman in the front row because he's not clapping, and I make him come up and I sing to him on stage. Sit down on stage, very gracefully, I might add. I sit down on stage and he's standing there beside me and I'm singing, he talks to me to him. And I stand up and I'm clapping as he's walking back to his seat, and I'm walking backwards on the stage. And when I turned around, I was right against my guitar player's monitor. And I didn't know it. And I took another step and fell face forward, bottom to the audience, front row. My dress comes up over my head, and I couldn't get up.
How long were you there in that position?
It felt like a year that I was. And nobody was, my band was just going, it was like, the world stopped for that moment. And I couldn't get up. And I kept trying to get up, and I didn't hurt myself. I didn't think I was hurt. Finally, I just rolled off of the monitor, and I stood up, and I said, well, I was looking for something in red. Now y'all know I found it.
I have one more question about that episode. How did the audience react?
You heard this. That was all you heard. It was like this huge, like 1,000, 2,000 people going at the same time. And I remember turning around looking in the front row at my label, and Jerry, this girl who used to work there, went. I mean, it was like the moment that every entertainer dreads, and it happened.
You made a movie called Proud Heart. And I gathered from what I've observed and read that you'd like to be a movie actress.
I would.
In addition to being a singer.
I would.
Would you give up the singing to be an actress?
No.
Okay.
And that was, we were doing a television series here in Nashville called Lorrie. And they wanted it to be a weekly series, and it was so draining for me. It was, I mean, really long hours, 6 and 7 days a week. And I said, when am I going to tour? Well, you don't need to because you'll be singing on this show. And I said, no, you don't get it. You know, I enjoy the stage and I enjoy performing, and that's what I want to do. If something else can come along and be, you know, an added attraction, then that's what I want. But as far as doing a weekly series and totally giving up my singing and my stage, I don't want to do it.
Lorelei Lee was a pilot you shot for CBS?
Right.
Where you played a detective.
I played a detective by day and a country singer by night.
Okay.
And oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, what happened to that?
Well, I particularly didn't like how they were portraying country music.
I noticed.
They had me come out in this pink can dress, hot pink, I might add.
A lot of fringe.
Can dress with the fringe and the little, I mean, I don't know of anybody in country music that really dresses that way, and unfortunately, the people who make movies and whatever, the first thing they think about when they think about Nashville is hay bales and barns.
It's stereotyping.
And it's so untrue. I mean...
Well, as I looked at this, I looked at some of this, and I said, Lorrie doesn't dress that way.
No. And being a character or not in the show, I didn't want country music to come across as the dumb hillbilly again.
Okay. So
I...
For those reasons, it didn't work.
Right.
Tell me what remains for you this year? What kind of projects? You're always into projects. What kinds?
Well, I have a brand new stage show this year that I'm very excited about. Of course, last year we had the War Paint Tour, and this year will be, I'm not real sure what the name of the tour is. I'm hoping it's just going to be called the Greatest Hits Tour, because we're going back and of course, my next album will be the Greatest Hits. And I'm hoping that people will, you know, remember a lot of the songs from the first album. We're incorporating back in the show.
Will all of the songs that have been hits for you at RCA be in this Greatest Hits album?
Yes, they will.
Plus you're going to add 3 more?
I think 3 more. Yes,
Okay.
one that I've written, and a new one that I've written, and I haven't got the last bridge to it written yet, so I'm going in the studio Monday, so I need to leave, Ralph, so I can go write it.
When does it come out?
The album comes out in April.
You have a tour with Clay Walker?
Clay Walker and I are touring all this year. Doing a few dates.
Is this, oh, this is a publicity shot for that.
Well, actually, it's not a publicity shot. That was from the photo session. I had already changed my clothes, and they had a few more shots in the camera, and as we were leaving, we were just kind of kidding around, and they took that. That's my own personal photo. That's not.
Okay. Are you touring with Clint Black as well?
I'm doing a few shows with Clint this year, and I haven't worked with Clint since probably in 4 years.
Excuse me. Go ahead and talk.
And also, where are you going, Ralph?
I'm going to put on my jacket, which you gave me for Christmas.
I did give you that for Christmas.
Yes, you did. Which is about, this is the War Paint, excuse me. It's the tour jacket. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. At this point, those are the projects that I'm working on. I'm very excited about this album.
Are you going to continue to pursue movies if they don't interfere with your singing career?
Right, I do. I really want, you know, I think the thing that I really am looking for in a movie is not particularly that movie, but like Whitney's first acting thing in The Bodyguard. I mean, that's the kind of role I'm looking for, something to open up a whole new venue for me.
Something you could block off 3 months or 4 months to shoot and then go back to...
and then get back to what I'm about.
I want to thank you for coming to this show. I know that some of the things we talked about, particularly the death of Keith Whitley, was very painful. But you handled yourself well.
You know that I love you very much.
I know you do. And I love you.
I really do.
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Lorrie Morgan.